It's your boy, what's the words?
I gotta say what's up to my y'all smoothvega.
Tuned into the smoothvega podcast. Smoothvega podcast.
The podcast bitches.
Well, if you don't know what time it is, now you do. We're finally here. Long time coming. The very first episode of the smoothvega podcast is here. Before I go any further, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to watch, like, and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to rate us 5 stars, leave a review, and make sure to follow. With that being said, I would like to welcome our very first guest on the show, Grammy Award-winning artist, someone that I've gotten a chance to know now and become, good friends with. Super cool dude. I mean, granted, I had to come all the way to San Antonio, Texas to make this happen, to get him out of the house, but we are here. Chris Perez, welcome to the smoothvega podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Thank you for coming to San Antonio.
Hey, I had to make it happen. Look, the fans, they loved the first time we had our conversation, that interview that we did in July of 2021. I think I speak for myself and yourself as well, that it was very, very well received. And I felt it was only right that we give people a part 2, so to speak. But before we go into all things Chris and we deep dive and, we do all that, how have you been? What's been going on with you,
Well, I mean, it's the beginning of a new year, so just trying to figure out what I want this year to look like. I mean, there's the things that happen naturally, the music side of things and whatnot, but the way I'm feeling this year is like I don't want to go into it so in like autopilot mode, automatic pilot mode. I'm not. I want to do different things, or at least that's how I feel right now. But at the same time, I'm really looking forward to getting back to work in the studio, because when 2022 ended recently, I was on a musical high. Super motivated, songs were just popping, into my head, and lyrics were popping into my head, which doesn't happen very often. That to me, like the musician part of it, the creating the music and the melodies, that's a lot easier than trying to figure out what to say. And a lot of times I rely on the hopes that something will just kind of stream of consciousness. And that did happen. It was happening a lot towards the end of the year. I made some moves in my personal life that kind of freed me up. And I think that's kind of what it created that space for me to be more creative.
Well, you know what, before we go any further and we go into what 2023, 2022, all that looks like, I want to revisit, our interview, our first conversation. I want to add some context for the viewers, because I don't think that anybody realizes or really truly comprehends that me and you had never met prior to that conversation. Like literally as the cameras are rolling, I'm meeting you for the very first time. We had a brief introduction, but we didn't know one another. And it was very important for me to be able to tell your story. I had been doing, my show, Nothing Beats Experience. And during the pandemic, when everything went, when everything shut down, I started doing virtual interviews, and I had the opportunity to interview AB Quintanilla, had the opportunity to interview Peter Studio, Shelly Lattes. And what I started realizing was I was really starting to create this series of interviews that had a lot of untold Selena stories. And so fans would always comment like, yo, you need to interview Chris. And then there was a handful of people that would be
like in the movie, but he doesn't talk. He hardly talks.
No, does he even exist?
Right.
Because it was interesting. The reason why I say that is because there was comments that would fire up, and people would be like, yo, there's no way that he's going to interview him because he's cool with AB, or hey, there's no way he's going to interview him. And I was really, really I thought it was crazy because I really wanted to interview you. So I made it my mission, which you don't know this. I made it my mission to interview you, man. I wanted to have a conversation with you. I watched all your interviews, bro. Like I literally studied endless interviews that you had from all over, just to kind of get a better idea of how your how your story's been told. And the reason why it was so important to me is because I feel like within journalism, within podcasting, within just interviewing altogether, people get a little bit lazy. They have a tendency to ask the same questions over and over and over again. And I feel like your story had yet to be told. So it was important to me. Just let me add that, to tell the story of Chris.
Yeah, you did a great job. I mean, in living in the moment, you don't really realize the impact things like that have on people, and just allowing me that space to not feel rushed, not feel like I got to do sound bites and make things fit into a really quick thing. You know, just the way it was all laid out for me. I think we both, worked really well together getting that done.
Man, I'm extremely proud of it. And I think the reason I was so proud of it was because I practiced it in my head for a long time. I was like, I was in front of the mirror, like, Chris, if you do, I'm just messing with you. But no, in all honesty, like, I think it's important today to have a continuation of the initial conversation, because I didn't know you and I didn't feel comfortable going certain places. Not that I'm going to go anywhere uncomfortable today, but I didn't feel comfortable going to certain places because I wanted to get a feel for your personality, and I didn't want to do wrong by you or the fans, So I just wanted to let you know that today is going to be a different conversation, because now that we've had conversations and, I know what I want to ask. So I'm going to start here. We had that interview, July of 2021, right? It was the day before an event that I had booked you for. And maybe 3 weeks after the interview was actually, published, there was a statement that you made that you and the Quintanillas had settled, whatever lawsuit that was going on, which I did not touch on in the initial interview out of respect towards everybody. Don't necessarily care to revisit that now either, but y'all settled those differences. Where does the relationship today stand with, the Quintanillas? I don't know if, I don't really know the extent of how bad it even got in terms of communication, relationship wise. Where are you guys at today in terms of that?
Things are definitely a lot better. Suzette and I speak pretty often. Abraham actually and I have spoken. It's funny, we've spoken more in the last maybe 4 months than we, did before the lawsuit. And I mean, at the end of the day, I love them. I really do genuinely love them. And I haven't spoken to AB. I do miss him. I do miss we had a lot of funny times together, and I mean, it's I kind of want to work to get back to, man, I love working with musicians, and Suzette's a great drummer and AB's an amazing bass player. And on that kind of level, like I hope that part is not over. I hope that we get another opportunity to play together, record together, do things together. But for sure, the personal stuff. Suzette is now a grandma, and she's sending me pictures of her with her grandbaby, and it's incredible. It's an amazing thing to see, and to see the joy in her face and how happy that makes her. How could that not make me happy? And I can't wait to see the baby.
Well, the interview. The reason I mentioned that, 3 weeks after the interview came out, that statement was published. Let me start off by saying I don't think the interview had anything to do with it, right? But it was so cool to see that, because I know that for me, being able to hear stories from Pete, from AB, from people around, I think it goes without saying, and I mentioned the interviews and all these people that I've interviewed, you kind of lazy, asking the same question. And a lot of it's always obviously about Selena. And I always kind of feel like, okay, you know what? Like, let's not go there. But it is a very compelling story for everybody. Like, it's the story that people always want to know about. They love to hear stories. So I get it. So I completely get it. And I've always had the utmost respect for the family. And I don't ever want anybody to feel as if our conversations or any conversations has been in any way other than to further tell the story. I also understand the perspective, which I think you can agree with, that I feel that the family has every reason to be overprotective with anything pertaining to the legacy of Selena. So I know now, being where we're at today, it feels good to hear that you guys are back on that level. And I would love to have a conversation with them if the opportunity ever presented itself, right? But yeah, I mean, I just go back to that initial conversation that me and you had, because a big goal of mine was to, you may think this sounds crazy, but to humanize Chris, right? Like really give people an insight as to who Chris is beyond, right? You're a very, celebrated guitarist. You've had a lot of success. And I just feel that there's so much things about you that people don't know, man. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, no, there is. And to be honest, I kind of like it that way. I mean, yeah, there's a part of me that wants everybody to really like kind of know me better than what they already do. But, for me and my personality type, I mean, I'm just super cool, chilling. I mean, that's why I say, like, being in the band with Selena was, and I say this now after having made my own band, after playing with so many different people in so many different bands and different projects and things like that. Like, my favorite thing was being in the band with Selena, and the Q's and Joe and Rick. And I mean, one, it was like, I learned so much, from those guys. And being the youngest one in the band, besides Selena, we were the two youngest. For me, it was just like a really exciting time. And it was getting to the point to, like, because we were on an upward, I should say she was on an upward, the trajectory that she was on. It was everything I dreamed of as far as being in a band, and without thinking right now about the personal stuff, we were married and our relationship and being together and all that stuff. Besides that, just as a guitar player, as a musician, songwriter, being in the studio with those guys and all that, it was the perfect job as far as I was concerned, because I was not concerned with being in the public eye like that. Yeah. I could like, I don't think hide is the right word, but I could like kick back in the back, and she controlled everybody's looking at her, and I had my little spots here to solo, and I didn't have to do interviews.
Yeah.
Things like that.
I'm sorry, Chris.
No. I have since, like, that was what, almost 25 years ago, and in that time, I was 25 when it happened. So, like, it's been 25 years of having to find my way and figure things out for myself.
Yeah. And kind of growing into that role, because that's something that you mentioned in the initial conversation, which the only other thing that I want to talk about in terms of revisiting the initial conversation was, when I say humanizing you, I think that when I studied your interviews and I studied your story, and I really just immersed myself in what I want people to understand about Chris, is that, look, as Latino men and really in general as men as a whole, we're not taught to deal with depression. We're not taught to deal with our traumas, childhood traumas and traumas that we experience as adults. You went through a very traumatic experience by losing Selena. And, of course, it was the world's loss, but it impacted you in a way that I don't necessarily feel that the general public truly comprehended, because it's like it happens, and then almost like you mentioned, like you were under the radar. You were a guy that was cool with playing your part, being in the background, and then you get thrusted into the spotlight, and now your life is being played out in front of millions and millions of people with movies and now TV shows. It's not a life that you signed up for, but it's a life that you inherited and now that you have. And that comes with a great deal of responsibility, because now people view you as a representation. And also, I say that to say that while this was happening, in specifically 95, 96, 97, you didn't really get an opportunity to even really process what just happened. And, you talked about it in your book, and you alluded to it before, that you went to a dark place, but it's important for me to express that and really state that. Not that you need me to, but man, dude, that's incredible to be here all these years later, and be able to have that understanding of yourself, because I don't know that that story has truly been told in that way, in that context. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, again, it's been a journey. And when everything first happened, I mean, I think the most important thing to me at that time that kept me somewhat sane and leveled was I had to have something near me that was as much a part of Selena as I could possibly get. And that was her family. That was her dad. That was her mom. That was her sister, her brother. And so just being around them was because I felt that at the time we were all kind of suffering the same kind of way, you know. But I will say now that I'm a parent myself, and I can see things from a parent perspective as far as like what Abraham and Marcella, what I imagine they had to go through, because I would think about, you know, I can think about my daughter and something like this happening. But that was a big part of getting to where I am now, you know, and then it went from that to, because when it first happened, I mean, it was devastating for everybody. It was in my mind, that was it. It was over. What's going to happen now? What are we going to do? Never mind, you know, having to deal with Selena no longer being there and the tragedy itself that happened. But what is what are we going to do? And I didn't have an answer. And Abraham took control of the situation as best that he could. And I was ready to just kind of stand behind him and help support him in any way that he might need me to do, whether it was go on interviews with him during that horrible time, whether it was, you know, just do different things like that. That became my
Your role.
Yeah, you know, and representing that love story, you know, which at the time it was, you know, it was different back then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It wasn't like what it feels like now. You know, the whole, you had mentioned this in the last interview about Romeo and Juliet and, you know, the love story and whatnot at that time. I mean, again, that's another thing that has changed. But back in the day, you know, especially when she was still, you know, alive, it was like, it wasn't cool to be with her. You know what I'm saying? But dudes would be like, you know, it was a whole different thing. So a lot of things have shifted, as it does in 25 years of living, you know what I mean? And so I'm extremely happy to be where I'm at now. That's why 2023 for me is just, it feels so, like open for opportunity and for change.
You know, and I got to give credit to Abraham, you know, because I don't think that, you know, enough people have said this in regards to him, where, you know, you'll have fans that'll have their take, their perspective, but this is their life's work. You know, this is something that they worked for from the time that, you know, they started. You know, this is a family dream. So to keep the legacy alive, it's definitely a challenge. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think that's something that I picked up from the conversation with you and getting to know you, is that you have a very good understanding as to what role you play, you know, not only within her legacy, but within your own legacy, because they're intertwined, you know, and, you know, there's always going to be that association, but through the association, I've always kind of wondered, like, you know, and this is, okay, this will definitely be the last time I bring up the interview, but I was a little hesitant to bring up the fact that, like, I felt that shadow that gets cast over you of the association with Selena, it makes it very difficult to move forward, not only professionally. I'm not talking about professionally, right? I'm talking about personally, like, you know, being in personal relationships, like you dating or you being married, like not only the public chiming in, right? Because that could be heavy. You know, when people start chiming in into your personal life, like whether they start comparing her to Selena or whatever the case may be, I'm talking about within the context of you having a personal relationship and that being something that gets mentioned. Like, I don't want to be intrusive, but I just want to get that perspective from you in terms of like how did you deal with that? You know, how did you deal with, you know, being able essentially to move forward and start living your life, and now people are chiming in, you know, like it wasn't something that you had before, and now you have that. How did that transition happen for Chris, you know, outside of the 90s going into the 2000s and the beginning of that part of your life?
Well, I'll say this. I'd hate to have to be going through the beginnings of all that stuff right now in the day and age that we live in with social media.
Boy,
you know,
it'd be
think about
rude.
1995. There was no, you know, there was none of that stuff. You know, Facebook, Instagram, just people tripping, having their own opinion in their comments. You know, the social media world and the internet and all that did not exist. So I didn't really have to hear a lot of negativity or things around that. Not that, I'm not even saying I would have gotten it back then. I just think that there's so much of it out there right now that if I think about it now, there's, you know, it's just, I have to say I'm grateful that I didn't have to go through that back then. But at first, I mean, of course, that was the furthest thing from my mind, you know, being in a relationship and having to deal with all that stuff. And with me, just like most everything else in my life, things have to happen organically, you know. And yeah, I mean, I've, you know, the thing that people most freak out on is if they've, you know, they find out I was married one time before, which, you know, I'm not anymore. Is they think it kind of somehow reflects on the love that I had with or for Selena.
Correct.
You know, and it's like, I think most people would understand that you can, you know, I mean, most people that are with somebody and things don't work out, and you move on, and then you're with somebody else and you fall in love with them, and maybe things don't work out and you go and you have another serious relationship. It's, I think that if those three people, if we're talking about it like that, I think you love each one in a different kind of way.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it's not like, I would like for people to understand, it's not like there's any less love or forgetting of anything. It's just, you know, I'm trying to find my way. I'm trying to, you know, I want to be happy. And Selena did show me for the first time what love really was. And going through the, you know, I don't know if for anybody else, I would go through the struggles that she and I went through and trying to hide our relationship at first, even though it felt horrible. You know, nobody wants to do that. But with our situation, we, after discussing it, we thought that was the best way to go for that time. You know, and then eventually, you know, we let certain people in the band know, and then Rick, who walked in, you know, like what happened in the movie, they presented as Joe walking into her and I kissing in the bunk area, but it was really Rick. Sorry, Rick, if I'm throwing you under the bus. I don't, but, you know, it's just, I mean, at 25 years old, you know, you think you know everything, right? You feel like you know everything. And at 53, it's so weird, which is what I am right now. At 53, it's like, it's kind of flipped. Like, I really don't know crap. You know what I mean? All I know is what makes me happy, and I don't want to be mean-spirited to anybody, and I want to be, you know, lead with love has been a thing that has been a recurring kind of a phrase that you know, keeps popping up with me, to lead with love. And it's not easy a lot of times, you know what I mean? Because it can hurt.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that's what I say, because I feel like there was a period of time where you mentioned, you know, overcoming demons and then getting to a point where you've embraced your role, not only as an ambassador of that part of your life, but also moving forward into your new part of your life, which is everything you've done with the band, everything you continue to do with the band. Like, you really serve as in my opinion, as a role model, and, you know, a great deal of hope for people that see you. And I don't know if I'm sure you know that now, but at what point did you comprehend that? Because you mentioned like, hey man, I'm 53 now and I still don't know everything. Like, was it just like one day you woke up in your 30s or in your 40s and you're like, fuck, I'm Chris Perez. You know, you're like, I'm really like this guy that I know, and not to be superficial.
Yeah, well,
You know?
well, you say it like if it's an amazing thing and like, wow, I'm this dude. And if that happens, oddly enough, I'm realizing this right now, it's more of a negative thing. Like to say that, for me to think that, you know what I mean? It's like there's so much weight and heaviness that comes along with that, the way I see it, you know, because having been drugged through it, you know, and called, and it's true, but it's something you would never at such a young age consider yourself, you know, and that El Viudo and the widower and just all the way I was treated with the media. I mean, it really messed me up.
Yeah.
You know, and so I still carry that with me to this day. I am grateful that things have changed in their social media and that I do feel like I have a voice, but that is always going to be with me.
Yeah.
You know, that's not something that just goes away or you forget about or you never think about. And I mean, even having to be secretive about it back in the day when she was alive and we were together, I mean, those things never leave you, you know, but you learn how to kind of, I think the big thing for me was I can't move on until I accept that that's a part of not only who I am, but how people perceive me.
Yeah.
You know, and then I can move on and I can kind of come to terms with it. You know, because if I can't do that, if I can't come to terms with that, then am I really moving on?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of stuff that comes with being, you know, that guy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that comes along. There's a lot of good, and there's some negative that I still carry with me to this day, you know.
Yeah, and I always kind of, you know, I think that's a big part of your story. You know what I'm saying? Like having a true understanding of the responsibility that it comes with. And when we say responsibility, just so you guys know, it's when I say being an ambassador, it's being a representation of everything past, present, and future. You know, you're talking about if Selena was part of his past, it's still part of the present that affects his future. So that's what I'm referring to. But you know what? Let's talk about some of the cool shit that you've been doing now. You know, I want to talk about some of the music that you put out. You know, obviously you recently did a deal with George Lopez, the comedian, man. I thought that's super left field, super random, but apparently he has a music imprint.
Yeah.
And you actually just did an interview with him as well. Malas Palabras, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yeah. Record company. Yes.
How did it come to fruition? How did you guys connect? How did Chris Perez and George Lopez, the world famous comedian, you know, like this just sounds like an episode of, you know, I don't know what, you know, but how did that happen?
Well, the world has become a lot smaller, man, you know, with the internet and all that stuff. So things that may have seemed like an impossibility are not only possible, but likely if you work towards that vision that you have, you know. And Andy, who runs the label along with George, Andy Vargas, who's Carlos Santana's lead vocalist when they go on the road, we've been friends for quite some time. I didn't know he was starting the label with George, and another acquaintance had told me about it, and they're like, would you be interested in talking? You know what? I was like, of course. And I had met George, and his vibe when I met him was really cool. You know, I met him at I think it was a Latin Grammy performance. It might have been a Billboard Award back in Miami, back in the heyday when, you know. And I don't know. I know I've told this story. So I was getting into the elevator at some fancy hotel in Miami. I don't know if I talked about this before, and I was the only one in the elevator. I was just coming back from a sound check with the guys in the Cumbia All Stars with AB and all those guys, and I'm getting in the elevator and I hear like somebody running, you know, and some clanging noise, and I'm kind of like, oh, I thought I was gonna be in the elevator by myself, right? Hey, hold the door. And so I was like, okay, I can't be, you know. So I held the door, and in walks George Lopez, you know, and I have the guitar on my back, and he looks at me, and, you know, he's like, hey. I said, hey, what's up? He says, what do you got in there? And I'm like, oh, it's a Fender Strat. You know, we had an exchange, and he was really cool. And then the next day we had a stage sound check, and he was up on stage going over what he was going to be doing, you know, his monologue and certain introductions and things. And I kept hearing, psst, you know, I'm like, who's making that noise? And it's him at the podium, and he's like, hey, and I liked him immediately. He was just, it was like easy to hang with, you know what I mean? And there was no wall or the kind of like the facade or the ego thing. I didn't get any of that with him. So when the topic came up about the record label, whatever, like, for sure, and they're okay, well, let's go, we'll talk about it over in Vegas of all places, and we'll talk about it and see how you feel. When I met him there again, dude, it was so crazy. I saw his show, and he was one of Eddie Van Halen's best friends.
Oh wow!
And so everybody that knows me knows that Eddie is he's my number one.
He's your goat.
Yeah. So of course, I'm waiting to get the business talk over with so that I could hit him up with these questions I had, and that's exactly what I did, man. And we ended up having a great night. And so he does a show, and then afterwards we go backstage and we're hanging out, and I walk into the room and there's a freaking Eddie Van Halen guitar. And I said, wait a minute, is that what I think it is? He goes, yeah, he gave me that one. And I was like, dude, he goes, check it out. And there I am, it was just surreal, bro. It was, and those are moments that make what I do all worthwhile for me. Like that's the.
And so y'all end up now going into business with each other, which I think is the crazy part, because obviously you did the single where you're actually doing vocals on, which was a first.
It's crazy.
The first time you getting on the microphone, and you distributed that record through Malas Palabras, correct?
Yes.
So that's where we're at today. And is there future plans to continue to work, and keep that working relationship moving forward, or are you kind of just doing like a per case basis?
No. As far as my band goes, everything is happening, so everything is going so good that I'm actually nervous and a little it's like there's so many things can happen, you know what I'm saying? And working with George and Andy and the Malas Palabras label, and it's just like, and then they also have some other artists that like I'm playing guitar for them, and it's like this really cool little family thing, and like I said earlier, like things have been popping off as far as songwriting and whatnot, and like there's other songs that I'm actually singing. I don't.
Let me find out.
Yeah, I'll let you. I'll let you hear some of one of the other songs I've got, and it's not the plan for me to become this lead singer guy.
Yeah,
but I do now understand what a song that I sing and it being my voice and it being something that I wrote, like what that means to the fans of my music, and of myself, whether it's from the Selena days or the Resurrection, CD days, which was 99, or some of the other records I put out after that. Like, it really freaked people out in a good way. And when I saw that, I mean, I got excited, but having said all that, I would never, like my lead vocalist in the Chris Perez band, John Garza, is, and I've told him this many times, I'm like, dude, you're the lead singer in this band because if I could sing like anybody, it would be you.
Yeah.
And he's a great guy to go along with that. So
I want to ask, you, for all the things you've accomplished musically, because you've accomplished a lot, a lot of stuff musically. One thing I've never asked, and I'm just curious, how much of a role has, being a parent, being a father to your kids, you have 2 kids, a daughter and a son. How much role has that played in just your perspective and you growing and doing what you do and having an understanding of just life?
It's man, I get emotional just thinking about it. It makes me the happiest out of everything, right? My kids do. But at the same time, I like there's, for me, it's like you think when you're living in the moment and you're living in the time that you're being like a really good parent because of, I'm present, I'm there. And then there are other times to where, like, the older I get and the wiser I get, I realized that what I thought was the best that I could do maybe really wasn't at the time. Like, I was okay, I was good, but I could have been better, you know, and that's something I can't change or take back because we've moved forward in time, and all I can do is be better now. You know, so my daughter, you know, and my son I'm constantly trying to be better for them, you know, and in turn, it makes me feel better about myself. You know, my daughter grew up around what I'll say now. I wouldn't have said this back then because I didn't think this, but my daughter especially grew up around a lot of the musician life, you know, and musicians hanging around, and, you know, a lot of love, but also a lot of just, there's a lot of craziness too, or what would be considered, not for me, but for, you know, people that have their 9-to-5 jobs, that come home every night, that are there at dinner time and whatever. That was a life I always envisioned for myself, and we never really had that. And that's something that I regret, you know, because it's something that I could have made happen had I worked harder at that, you know. So I do have regrets. And sometimes I thought just being present was enough. And I realize now, for me, I don't think being present as often as I could be, I don't think that was enough. Like I could have, I don't know, man. I think really just not having my dad around growing up, it's like I thought I was doing a lot more and being better, but I think, you know, I could have been even cooler.
You know, and I agree with you. I feel that that's something that I've had to come to the realization the older that I've gotten. You know, I have 3 kids. You know, I have a soon to be 13, 12, and 9-year-old, right? So they're still babies, but you know, my father was always the hardworking guy, you know, never really present at the house, but always providing. And now that I've gotten older, love him to death. Don't get me wrong, I respect him, respect the sacrifices he's made, but, you know, there's a little bit of a resentment that grew there because it's like you weren't as involved as maybe you could have been. So now I'm trying to be that for my children, and the things that I deem being there, I feel like I really should be doing and could be doing more because their perspective is different.
Exactly.
But it's what was normal to us. It's what we grew up around it. So it's what we knew. I will ask this though, you know, it's 2023 now. Crazy to think that it's been 30 plus years of a career that you've had. What makes Chris happy in 2023? Like, what defines happiness for you today? You know, because it changes, right? But like,
yeah, it changes.
What would you say is your happy space today? Like, you know, what fulfills Chris?
There are a lot of things, but if I had to put at the top of my list what it would be, it'd be my kids. It'd be my son and my daughter. My daughter is, I mean, I'm so proud of, you know, the young lady she has turned out to be. You know, she's 23 now. And just, she is so, like, she's smarter and wiser than I am now at 23 years old, you know, and life is not easy, man. I mean, it's not easy for most people, you know, so to see her living life, jumping the hurdles that get in front of her, dealing with the times when they're not easy, you know, and at the same time being there for her as much as I can be, you know. It's like, I can only say, and I say this all the time, hey man, you need anything, mama, just, you know, call me. And we live like probably not even a half mile away from each other.
Oh wow, so you're pretty close by.
Yeah, I'm pretty close by. And I called, like a matter of fact, I called her today and I was like, hey, I had gone to the grocery store, I came back and I'm putting the groceries away, and like, you know, as a parent, kids pop into your mind and you get this vibe, this feeling, and I got this feeling like I gotta call her. And I called her and I'm like, hey, she's like, hey, what's up, Dad? Just checking in, you know, thought about you, want to make sure everything's cool. You okay? Yeah, I'm good. I said, okay. As long as you're good, I know you're good, then I'm okay. You know, and I said, I feel kind of selfish right now because I don't care if you're busy or not. I'm going to call you anyway.
You know, I have a question. You know, maybe you don't have to answer this question, but I'm just curious. Like, obviously, your daughter's 23.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if she's already started dating, but if she has started dating, what was the experience like whenever she introduced her first significant other to you? Was it awkward? What was that look? What did that look like? Was it like a scene out of Bad Boys when you and Carlitos were at the door and, you know,
Nah, man. I mean, again, if we want to think like we're a product of, or we're trying to change things different than how it came up for us. I mean, I'm the cool guy.
Oh, cool, man.
You know, I'm the good guy. I'm the nice guy. I'm the, you know, like I tell my daughter, and we've already gotten to that point, you know, and I tell her, you know, this is your life. You're old enough now, you're on your own, you're handling your business. She doesn't really ask for much. Yeah. And that's one of the other things that I'm so proud of her for. You know, she picked her road, she's going down it. Again, there's bumps in it, you know, and I tell her, this is your life. You get to make the decisions, you know, and you get to also live with the decisions that you make. Now, if you stumble, if you fall, I'm going to be right here. I'll be right there next to you. But you have to do that yourself, because she's asked me about relationship things, and it's like, well, how do you feel? What do you think? Do you want me? Okay. There's like, there's two answers. There's the one I just said, like, look, you have to make your own decisions and you have to live by that. Now, are you asking me what I think about it? Like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'll tell you what I think. And I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to, you can tell me anything you want to tell me, and I'm not going to judge you. And that's one of the beautiful things I got from my father. My father was the same way. He, I don't want to say caught me doing things, because I wasn't really hiding anything. I was just a dumb teenager.
You're just young. Yeah.
And like, you know, and I made some mistakes, and he would, like, my dad's way of communicating, it's beautiful. I find these notes that I still have, you know, and he wrote me this one long note, and he left it there at my house, like right after Selena passed away. And if I let you read it there, you wouldn't be able to have a dry eye. I mean, it is just, you know, my dad, that's his way of communicating the deep stuff, is by writing it down. And his penmanship is amazing too. He's like super, you know, no mistakes. And so, yeah, and my daughter's the same way. She got that as well. Like, she leaves me letters and I find them, and she's like, because we lived together, you know, after she graduated from high school, she lived with me for a few years, and I wasn't ready for her to move out, you know, but she wanted to do her own thing, and I supported her in that. And she wrote me these letters. Read this. Don't read this until I leave. And then she wrote me another letter. It was like, read this when you miss me. And like, you know, and I would open that up, and I must have read them 1,000 times, you know, and then she gives the most thoughtful gifts, you know, for me being her father, little letters, and it's I mean, that is the number one thing for me, you know.
You mentioned earlier that you hadn't spoken to AB in a while. Any specific reason why that you haven't spoken to him? Is it just time, you know, maybe that certain things haven't been mended there, or, you know, because he blocked me on social media. I don't know if you know that. He blocked me on Instagram after our interview release. So I don't know if it was a little bit.
No, a lot of people have told me that.
Yeah, it was pretty funny, because I had a good relationship with him. You know, I booked him as a promoter. We had several conversations, a great deal of respect from what he is musically. And then, you know, he blocks me. So I was like, oh, man, this is all goddamn Chris's fault. I'm messing with you, bro. I'm messing with you.
You know,
I'm messing with you, bro. You know, it wasn't your fault at all. It was just, you know, but I figured, you know, it might be sensitive. So where's that, you know, is there a specific reason why I haven't spoken, or time? Do you think it's just time? It hasn't caught up right now. You guys are on two different paths at the moment.
Yeah, I just don't think the opportunity has presented itself, you know, not in the right way. And he has told Babo, you know, who I work with very often. He's my right hand man in the studio, you know, at my studio. And Bob, he's from Corpus, which is where AB lives, and so every now and again he'll go out, and once when we're not working and he's back in Corpus and he goes out every now and again, they'll run into each other, and he has told Bobble, please relay this message to Chris, and without getting into it, it's really nice things.
Oh, that's cool.
So there's that. And like it's a little weird. Like we kind of do things, or like I posted a picture of me and him and good times with AB,
I saw that.
because it's genuine, you know what I mean? It's my love for him and the rest of the family is it's true. It doesn't, when there seemed to be a lot of negativity floating around, it's like, and these things were being said, these ugly things. I mean, it didn't make me feel good, even though it wasn't about me. And it's like, we're having our issues. It's like, I don't want to hear or see that stuff. And so that was tough, I think for all of us.
Well, I hope that I get the opportunity to talk to him too, because I think maybe there was a little bit of, misunderstanding with whatever he may have interpreted it as. But, I understand the idea of being overprotective over what they may assume being the narrative, whatever. It's all good. We'll talk soon. But I had to ask you that question. One thing that I do want to ask is that now that, you being, obviously a veteran in the music industry, being 2023, that's weird to say, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you feel old,
no,
bro.
No, it's all good.
You know what I'm saying? I ask because, like, I wondered, like, do you keep up with new artists? Like, do you see some of the new acts that come in and that you're like, man, you know what, that artist, like, I know obviously AJ Hearns, we both know someone that, you heard that you're like, hey, I like that kid. He's talented. You'll come across talent that, for lack of better words, that you want to work with. Obviously XP Valentine, you play guitar on one of her records for me. Do you keep up with music still, like in terms of like what's coming in, or are you just at that point where, like, I'm at that point now where I'm just like, shit, I like what I like, bro?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's that part of me, right, that just likes what I like, but then I can appreciate artists that really work hard at their craft. Mm-hmm. And not just the songwriting aspect of it, but I was talking to XB Valentine just a second ago about how I because we follow each other too on Instagram. So I saw the other day, she's out there hustling, not just the musician part of things and songwriting part of things, but making it happen, out there and doing her merch. And I told her, hey, I do the same thing. I'm there. You can catch me there folding my stuff and putting away. I said, difference is though, she does it so nice.
I know, right? It's all neat.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I can appreciate anybody that works hard in this industry. Now at the same time, it's like, if I were to like really try to work with another artist or help kind of mentor them or like sign them to Blue Mariachi Productions, that's a lot of work, because, or I would feel it, because I'd feel like that responsibility, like I have to, like the focus has to be laser focused on that. I wouldn't just do that and then, leave you, twisting out there in the wind.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think leadership comes with the cost, and mentorship also comes at a cost, because, you have to be fully invested in order to be able to do that to a high level, which I think at this point, all of us, we're not here to waste time. We're here to make an impact. So we're going to give all of ourselves. But I asked that because I want to know, have you ever seen like what you would deem or consider a young Chris? Like, or someone that reminds you of you, a younger you? Or is that something that you haven't come across yet? Because I like to always I've yet to really truly find something like that myself. But I want to know, has Chris seen a young Chris? It could even be just musically.
Yeah, no, not really. But I don't think that I've seen a lot of really cool young musicians, songwriters, performers, things like that. But for me personally, I allow everybody in my mind their own space. would never look at it as something like that. Now, again, it's a little twisted for me because I love what I do so much that a lot of times it doesn't feel like work. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times it feels like super duper work, you know, because it's something that comes from the heart. And if you're the type of musician like myself that wants to most of the time write about what you feel, what's going on with you, then it's like you're kind of really vulnerable in your approach to songwriting, which has become more of the thing with me than guitar playing. Guitar playing now is like,
They're riding a bike.
I mean,
I know you respect the craft, but it's not as challenging maybe because you've been doing it for forever, for lack of better words, for your whole life. You know, I think songwriting is a little bit more of you know, implementing your DNA and really kind of going a little bit deeper. And
yeah,
I think there's a lot more to be said on the songwriting aspect of it.
yeah, and I'm really careful with like I don't want to take it for granted. You know what I'm saying? Or I don't want to feel like I can take it for granted. As a matter of fact, and I was talking to George about this the other day, George Lopez. I was saying, it's still to this day, even when I tracked the guitar lead for XB Valentine's track, and I did some other stuff, and every time I'm gonna do something like that, I go in like, not literally as the figure of speech, praying to God, like, please don't let me suck. Please let something cool happen here, because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's going to come out. I have this almost like this fear of, okay, so let's use that song as an example. We put, I have Bob loaded up into the computer. He's playing it back. It's on a loop. I'm getting, I'm like, okay, I think I'm feeling the vibe. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not hearing anything yet. And I'm getting my guitar out, putting the bar on, I'm getting the cable, plugging it in, and I'm just like, what? Like, what's going to happen? And then I turn it on, and then I just start. And not knowing, like always scared that it's not going to be good enough, or that I'm just going to not be able to grab anything, or worse, I'm just going to do what I always do. Like lick and like kind of just rote habit.
Yeah.
And I don't want to feel that way, but I do every time, and I think that is what lights that fire under my ass when I go into record.
Well, I also think that's also an extension of you caring, because I feel like when you don't have a feeling, it's because you don't care. It's not causing you to react, and when you react, it's because you care.
Yeah.
You care about your craft. You care about presenting yourself and as a musician a certain way, and I think that says, it speaks volumes from you, especially doing it for as long as you've done it.
Well, there's people though. There's people though that, and AB is one of these people. AB is one of these people that he's got a healthy ego, and he's worked with so many people. I mean, he's got a healthy ego when it comes to playing with other people and going into the studio and recording and producing and playing the bass and whatever. It's like, he's comfortable. He's not worried about anything.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
He might say something different, but and like, and this is the first time I'll ever say this, or I've ever said this out loud. But when we were tracking, because I played on all the Cumbia King albums up until La Vida de un Genio. I didn't play on that one, but I played on all the first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, etc. I played on all those records, and one time it got the better of me, that feeling, that worry that I wasn't, that I wouldn't be able to contribute, when we tracked Ozo Motley, who I'm a big fan of, was coming in to record a song, and it was gonna be, and I told Dave, what are we gonna do? What's gonna happen? He's like, don't worry about it. We'll do it when, when they get here. And I was like, okay. And then, it was going to be a few days later. So I went back to San Antonio. I was at home, and I knew when they were flying in to Q Productions, and then we were all supposed to work on a song together, and I didn't show up, dude.
Wow.
I didn't show up because that voice, and it was a lesson learned. I never did that again. But so when Mi Gente was created off of the Cuatro album, I wasn't a part of it. I wasn't there. It was like, where were you? And I don't remember what I said. I made something up.
I got sick.
Really, that was the truth, was that it helped my own insecurities held me back. And it was a lesson learned. I never did it again. Now I ended up tracking on the song. I played guitar on it, and then I did, the guy from Ozo did the first half of the guitar solo, and then I did the second half of the guitar solo. So I did end up recording on it, but the day it was created, I wasn't there. And it's always been like, damn, like I shouldn't have done that. But at the same time, it was the lesson that I needed to go through for myself, so that, like you said, being uncomfortable, it just means that I care that much and I want to be.
It absolutely does, and I looked at, something that me and you talked about, before, was that there was a lot of uncertainty, with the pandemic too, and coming out of that, and, you branching off and doing the hot sauce, and then, now you're back on the road. You're doing a lot of shows. I've been seeing you picking up your workload, whether it be on the meet and greet side or also playing. You played at the State Fair. I caught you over there. By the way, I appreciate that, because I really wanted to connect you with Virgil Ortiz. He's a guitar player himself.
Awesome dude, man.
You know what I'm saying? I definitely, y'all got to get a session at some point. But really cool to see that. But I just kind of, now we're in 2023, and you talk about that, I guess you would say insecurity out of fear, or out of, feeling that care to be the best, or do your possible best. What do you want to do now? Like, what is it that you care to do now? Do you still get that high off of being the performer? Do you still want to be the performer? Do you still want to play gigs? Do you, obviously you're working on new music, so the intent is to release a lot of new music, but is this under the Chris Perez band, or is this, another project, or are you going to continue to just kind of do freelance work for other artists? Like, where are we at today, and where do you want that next step of your career to look like?
I'm working really hard at all that stuff you just mentioned. Add on the hot sauce brand that we've created. But as far as on the music front, CPB, Chris Perez band, I would like to put an EP together, and we have enough material. It's just like, I'm great at getting things done. So like, we've got like, 20 something songs at least, but it's getting them finished, because that's one of my issues, is like having a song finished, because you can always, add more to it, or take stuff away, or change this sound. And like, it's hard for me to like say, okay, that one's done, on to the next one. So that's a priority for me when I get back to work here in the next week. This is my only, believe it or not, my 1 week off, bro, in 2023, because I get back in the studio after this. And although I was technically off for the, Christmas and Thanksgiving, I mean, that's time where I'm with my son, and I'm with him 24/7 practically when we're together, and I take care of him. And, my son has special needs, Down syndrome. So although he's the life of the party, you know what I mean? But, being there for it for me, it means a lot to be able to be there for him. So when I do have him, I'm with him. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And it can be work sometimes, but it's a labor of love, and it can be it's also a lot of fun. He's a sweetheart. Everybody, my family and my friends, and he's just, he loves music, and it's that has been, the holidays have been, that was my holiday, right? So then I have this, he just started school again. So then I have this week off, and then Bobble comes back after this week, and we get in the studio, and then it's on, and the priority is to finish all these nuggets that we have. They're finished songs. So that's not the hard part. It's the finally putting your foot down and saying, okay, we got to finish these, and we got to mix them, and we got to put them out. That's priority. There's also another thing that Carlos, there's this project that I'm a part of with him, which is Metal featuring Chris Perez. And we've actually been going into the studio and recording original material with him. And it's a different thing than the CPB in that I'm not writing any of the songs.
Yeah.
The song's already done. I go in and I kind of do what I did with the Dinos. I'm playing guitar. It's not the same type of music. It's more of like a Juanes with a heavier edge, and there's some heavy stuff going on. There's some ballads, and it's good stuff. That's another thing, but the whole thing behind that is like Carlos is handling that. So I mean, it's a lot of fun. We go on the road and we do these shows and we play a bunch of cool songs that we love, cover songs, and some we change up to a more rock version. And it's almost like what Van Halen did when they would cover like, You Really Got Me, or the Linda Ronstadt song, You're No Good. And, and it's just a lot of fun. And the musicians in that band are amazing as well. So, those two things you'll be hearing this year for sure. I would even guess the first quarter of this year. There's going to be a lot of music coming out from me.
And a lot of shows. And you know what, man? I want to conclude with this. First and foremost, I appreciate you sharing that about your son. Something that obviously I knew, something that I didn't necessarily want to bring up. So I appreciate you always just being transparent with me and trusting me with, having a conversation. It's, like I said, when I first met you, it was such a big deal to me because, it goes without saying, like, I mentioned, a compelling story. Not just Selena, but I think your story. And I feel the reason why our interview and now our interviews have performed the way that they've performed is because people do want to hear from you, man. And I think people want to hear your story. We've discussed, getting to a point where you can eventually share your story, whether it be through a movie or a series or whatever. And there may be some legality that may prevent some of that stuff from happening to the degree that it can. But man, we'd love to hear from you, man, because you have so much experiences, man, that, I think a lot of people could take from, young musicians can, really truly learn not so much the do's and don'ts, but how to handle some of the pressures that come with the roles that come with being, I know you hate this word, but celebrity, man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, it is what it is, man. So, no, I mean, Chris, I just want to say thank you, man. And before I wrap up, what is there anything that you want to say to your fans? Because there's a lot of them out there. So many of them, support you, and by way of you, they've grown to support me as well, and I appreciate them. I had somebody message me just last week, not knowing that I was going to sit with you, and just telling me how the conversation with me and you was like the best conversation she's heard in her 35 years of living. And it really moved me to know that, people are that invested into your story. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to tell it. So to your fans, you say what?
To my fans, I just want to say thanks for all the support. I feel the love from you guys, and basically, let's be nice to each other out there. And like I was saying earlier, I guess the phrase that's been popping in and out of my head, a lot lately is to lead with love. And it's not easy all the time, but it makes everything it makes the world a better place, and it makes everything better around you. I really believe that.
And well, I'm proud of you, man. I'm proud of where you're at in your life today. The fact that I feel like you have a true understanding of who you are and what role you play in terms of, the responsibility aspect of who Chris Perez is. And, also I think Selena as well, you're...
Yeah, of course, for sure.
You're a very great ambassador for that, and something you should take a great deal of pride in, for sure.
I'll fly that flag as long as they'll have me fly it. I mean, it's on that note, I mean, everything she represents, what she has become, in these, everything she left behind for us, the music, the interviews, and I mean, I couldn't be prouder, and I'm really grateful that I was able to be a part of all that in any way.
Well, man, there you have it. That right now is my good friend Chris Perez. Make sure to follow him at Chris Perez Now on Instagram, on Facebook. I'm not sure if he's on Twitter, but look, be on the lookout for all his upcoming shows, man. And I appreciate your time again. And even though I had to come all the way to San Antonio to get you out of the house, we made it happen, all right?
Yeah, I know. And it's always good to see you too, man, and talk to you. And I mean, you know, so we're doing the interview now, but all this stuff we get to talk about when we're off camera. And,
it's going to be fun. I appreciate you guys, man. We out, man. You already know.